All right, so this morning we learned about what promises are and more importantly how they relate to applications when you want to fetch data or fetch anything from a third-party source. Most likely you're going to be working with a lot of APIs moving forward, and fetch is going to be your main way, at least in JavaScript, how to get data either from a server you create, a server hosted locally, or a server in a data storage warehouse in like Seattle or something. So today we're going to kind of take what you learned from your previous mods with CRUD, so creating, reading, updating, deleting, and translating that into JavaScript fetch. Did you guys learn about these verbs like get, post, patch, put, delete in your internet lectures? Awesome. Yeah, so if we were to translate CRUD to these HTTP verbs, your creation would probably be like your posts. So kind of like a really quick like why this is the way it is. Basically, some guy decided to standardize the convention in which we would transfer different like data across the internet. So posting is what we use to say, hey, we want to create some sort of resource, create some sort of data in some database somewhere. Reading is just your get. This is us wanting to get data, get resources, whether it's like give me a list of all Pokemon or get me a list of one Pokemon. Patch and put, they're starting to be used a little bit more interchangeably. The very slight difference is that put is your like updating a resource in its entirety, whereas patch is you're maybe updating like a single field, like a single key value pair in that resource. And then the D is the same, stands for delete, the verb is delete for HTTP requests. So a lot of web applications nowadays are actually single page applications. So gone are the days where to navigate anywhere in the web, you would click a link, then you'd see a white like loading screen for a couple seconds. Nowadays, if you go to a lot of different websites, even if you click somewhere, it'll like send you to another quote unquote page, but really there was no actual page load. The screen didn't go white. You just saw this little icon kind of loading, and then things were re-rendered on the page. So with JavaScript, you can do a lot of that type of stuff, and you'll be learning a lot more of that in your next module, and you'll be doing a lot of that for your independent project in Mod 5. So what we're going to be doing today is we're going to have a little bit of fun, and we're going to build a single page app where we're going to be able to look up some Pokemon from a database and create our own Pokemon. How we're actually going to do that is I'm using a tool called JSON Server. It's this really amazing way to kind of like mock a database backend API. All you need is like a JSON file, and then all you actually need to do is like in your terminal, where your JSON file is, you just type like JSON server, and then the name of your JSON file. And if this works, why did it throw an error? Let me see if it actually did anything. Localhost, do I see Pokemon? Nope, I might need to, maybe I need wash. Try that, I'll let you guys know how it goes. Pokemon, JSON. This guy, fun stuff. Database, loading Pokemon. Let's say, oh, I have another thing loading, don't I? Kill it. There we go. All right, so today I learned JSON Server won't tell you if there's something else running on your port. You have to figure it out yourself. Awesome, but now we have this mock API where if we make an API request to this URL, it sends us this fancy data. So the first thing that is really useful once you actually look in the documentation of JSON Server is it has a lot of these default already configured routes for you. What essentially this slash like Pokemon is in your JSON file. It looks for the very first object. It'll look for a key that says like that matches that that route. So it'll look for this, and then if it's a single like get without any type of ID, it'll send you like this whole array. And then if you request it with a single ID, it'll basically go through, look for that exact resource you're attempting to like query for, and then send you just that. So for example, if I do Pokemon 2, this will get me just Ivysaur. I definitely encourage you guys to like try this out. It's really great if you just want to like build out your front end without connecting it to like a Rails server, to just like quickly like have a proof of concept for your project. So we'll go into these throughout the creation of this create your own Pokemon app. But let's see what our challenges are for this CRUD app. So the first challenge we're going to attempt to do is we're going to try to render all of our Pokemon sprites to the screen. Just a quick note, I decided not to be super ambitious. I only decided to take the first 25 Pokemon instead of all like 720. And started off by stealing some of Melanie's code from the lecture Pokemon review yesterday. We already have some ways to render the cards, and some of the CSS I just copied over from your Pokemon lab. But let's see if we can somehow fetch data from our mock server and like put that information on the page. Function. So the very first function I'm gonna write is a function to fetch all Pokemon. And then I'm gonna call that function as like basically the first thing once the DOM is fully loaded. So how do we make a fetch call? We just type out fetch, okay? And then anyone remember the parameters we put in?
URL address.
Okay, so in our case, the URL address is this right here, fetch. And what can we do now?
We can add thens.
Okay, I can add a then.
Maybe to console log it to see if it worked.
Perfect. So let's attempt to console log whatever is the result of this then. So I refresh. I see we get a nice object. It looks like it's an HTTP response object. Awesome. What do we want to do with this?
Parse it to JSON.
Parse it to JSON. Anyone remember from this morning's lecture how to do that? So I know this is a response object.
You can just write response.json.
.json. Okay. We can see if this works. So if this actually returns a promise, that means I should be able to get some sort of data here. Okay, hey, look at that. We have a 25 Pokemon. Nice. Okay. Instead of console logging, I'm just going to have some curly braces. Okay. So I know this is my JSON data. And actually, I'll put that back. I'll console.log our JSON data just so we remember what it is exactly we're working with. So what do I want to do with all of this data? Keep in mind that I, again, stole a little bit of stuff from the lab review we had yesterday. How do I get these on the page?
It looks like you're using JavaScript class construction.
Mm-hmm.
So you probably want to create a new JavaScript objects.
So
Pokemon class with all the data.
we'll just do it functionally for now. So this render, all it does is it's creating like a new div with this Pokemon object's like information. So it doesn't have to be like a class Pokemon. It can just be like a generic JavaScript object Pokemon.
You can just iterate through the JSON data,
Okay.
and for what you're iterating through, basically each element is going to be an object that contains all the Pokemon information. So then for each object, you can call the render function and pass in the Pokemon.
Okay. Let's see what this looks like. All right. Nothing happened yet. Let's double check a few things. So this is our for each. We're passing in a Pokemon. We're attempting to render each Pokemon. Let's see if I even get inside this render method. Okay, I'm inside the render, and I got here 25 times. Looks like I'm creating all this Pokemon card stuff.
Yeah.
Not appending it. All right. Let's see how I can append it. So let's take a look at what our HTML offers. It looks like I have this Pokemon logo. I've got this form. I've got this Pokemon container that's just chilling there. Let's use this. So you guys have probably seen some of this pattern before, where we just have a function just to get this container in case we want to use it over and over again. Get Pokemon container. And then this is going to return document.query selector. And then this was the ID.
So you get by ID.
We can do get by ID too, yeah. Get element by ID. Now, let's actually append each one of these Pokemon card divs to our Pokemon container. So get Pokemon container dot append child this Pokemon card. So comment that out. Hey, look at that! We got Bulbasaur, Ivysaur, Venusaur, Charmander, all the way down to Pikachu. This is a male Pikachu, by the way. Its tail is just putting that out there. Okay, awesome. So that was actually a lot simpler than what it might have otherwise been if we had just done a bunch of callbacks. You can see our main function that we use to get all this data basically has about 3 commands. So you want to fetch it from this URL. We want to JSON parse that response. And then this is always, in my opinion, kind of the hard part. What do you want to do with that data? In our example, we wanted to append all that data onto the screen, but you might want other things from that data. Maybe you don't want to append it on the screen. Maybe you just want to get data about like a Pokemon, see the name, and then store the name of that Pokemon somewhere. So when we're working with fetch, you'll often see this pattern. Get from the API, JSON parse it, and then what do you want to do? We want to do something with data. What? Up to you. Depends. Depends on what you want to do. So that's basically the kind of the like the typical like get type of fetch. It will kind of pay off to just be very familiar with this syntax and this pattern. All right, so if we go back to like our challenge, get and post Pokemon app, we see all the Pokemon sprites. That's awesome. We've done that. This next one's going to be pretty interesting. Delete a Pokemon on click. So if I click on a Pokemon, I want to destroy that resource. Completely take it out of the database, take it off the page, everything. So we have not done anything other than a get fetch so far. We're not quite sure how to do it. We know we'll probably want a function for that, so we can have a function that's like delete fetch a Pokemon. And we know we're going to fetch something, but we're not sure what. So when you're not sure, we'll just look up documentation. Okay, using fetch. Okay, so it looks like a basic fetch request is really simple to set up. Have a look at the following code. Fetch, and then this is actually exactly what we've done. We've just done arrow functions, so our implementation is actually much more elegant. Then we JSON response it. We JSON parse the response. Then we do something with that JSON data. Okay, so this is just an example of a get fetch. Cool, we already know how to do that. What else you got for me, MDN? Here we're fetching a JSON file across the network, printing it to the console. Okay, now it looks like we're getting into a lot more complicated stuff. Supplying request options. The fetch method can optionally accept as a second parameter an init object. Okay, good to know. So we're very much used to our fetch function taking in a single argument, which is a URL. Turns out the fetch, so right here, fetch, first argument's a URL, the second argument is this giant looking object thing, okay? We'll have some object thing. Okay, what do we put in here? Let's see. Some options we have are method post, mode cores, cache, no cache, credentials header. This is kind of scary looking stuff. So when you have a lot of documentation like this, genuinely curious, what do you guys tend to do?
Might look up a specific thing, like, I mean, this, we're looking for HTTP keywords, so I can post with them. Well, what are other methods I can put in there?
Okay, so yeah.
Can I use all the other HTTP methods?
So in our example, what sticks out to you guys in this documentation? If we're trying to, what was that?
The method part of it?
The method? Okay, so the method, in this example, it has post, but it has some other comments. You can do get, post, put, delete, etc. Let's try that. So let's just copy and paste all that, uncomment this out.
So I had a question about that. Like when we were doing Ruby and stuff, I thought that HTTP only could do get and post, because we had to append, like, we had to add hidden fields to some of the stuff to like make sure it adjusts the method to make it a delete request or other types of requests. Is that something that JavaScript just does inherently that we don't need to worry about?
So I can tell you for fetch specifically, or at least HTTPS using JavaScript, the keywords are basically what APIs will look for. So if you don't send a get and you call it something else, you call it like a read, the API will often probably have no idea what you're talking about and will not serve your request. That being said, there is some flexibility. I believe, I'm not 100% sure, but I'm pretty sure. It's not case sensitive. You could probably do posts. There's a few other unused ones, or they're just not used as often. Options is one. It's like kind of like this weird, like, it's just like, in my opinion, it just works as like another get. It's used less often, but what I've seen a lot is people just like uppercase the whole thing, but I'm pretty sure you can, it's not case sensitive. Okay.
It's HTTP, or it's HTML forms only support get and post.
Oh, it's just the forms,
So
not the
yeah, the
actual
reason we couldn't
URL.
send
Okay.
that stuff was the forms.
Did support.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Yeah, and I also, you guys know a lot about Ruby that I might not necessarily know. So a lot of it, we'll just try it out. Maybe it works, maybe it won't. So the method we're going to attempt to do is delete. Okay. We don't really know what else is to really do. We can ignore this stuff. But if we're trying something out for the first time, at this point, what would you guys do?
Console log something.
Okay, so what would we console log? We know a fetch will return a promise, so we could just tag on a dot then. This is a response. And so I'm just gonna console.log the response. Okay. So we need some way to call this because we've just set it up. When do we want to call this delete fetch call? When we click on any one of these cards. Okay. So let's set up another function to add a click handler to these cards. So I'm going to call this add click handler. It's going to take in some node, and for that node we're going to add an event listener for click, and it's going to call this delete fetch a Pokemon. One thing to notice with deletes, if we look at our JSON server documentation, delete will require an ID of some sort. So over back to our code with our URL, before it was this. We can still use it, but we'll also need some ID. Not sure where this ID is coming from yet. For now, let's plan to pass it in as an argument. So we'll delete fetch a Pokemon, and then on that node, we'll have to figure out how we can go from the node, get the ID, and send this into the delete fetch. Does that make sense to everyone? There's many ways you could do this. That's just the way I thought of in my head. That's the way I think you guys were introduced to it yesterday. So let's just go with that. We'll have our, let's see, I think we'll have our, we'll have the node. We'll also have the event too. So when you click it, you should just be able to do event and then target. Oh, actually, let's do event, current target, sorry. Current target will be whatever is calling this click handler. And if we're adding this click handler to the individual cards, then current target should always be the card. We will console.log this slowly once we put it all together just to see if it works. So assuming that we have on our data set some ID value, that's what we'll send as the ID. Now, let's actually add this click handler to all of our cards. So we have the card here. Let's do add click handler. We add in this Pokemon card. Okay, so I'm going to take it one step at a time. I'm actually going to comment this out. Whoops, no, not this. I've coded a lot. I don't feel comfortable testing all of it at once. So I'm just going to console log, hey, can I get this node when I click on it? Oops. Console.log. Okay, so let's refresh the page. Looks like we successfully added the click handler for everything. Now if I uncomment this out, still going to take this one step at a time. Let's console.log the actual click. And I'll log the event.current target. Okay, so now if I click Pikachu, looks like I get this entire Pikachu card as an object. Does anyone know what the difference would be if I, instead of event.current target, I did event target?
Would that be the actual child of the div class?
Child of the div class. So what children are there? So there's a header, there's an image. That is correct, but let's like console.log it just so we can improve our understanding. So here's our event target, and then I'm going to say event current target, and then type this here, event current target. So if I click on, let me click on the corner of this card. Looks like the event target and the current target are the same thing. If I click on this Pikachu, so it looks like the event target was like the most nested HTML element that I could possibly click on, and then the current target is just whatever our event listener is attached to. So what I essentially want is this current target, which is this, in both cases, it's the actual card. I want to get the dataset.id of this card. So at a glance, it doesn't look like that dataset ID exists yet. Let's add it. We'll do Pokemon card.dataset.id. We'll just make it, actually, yeah, I have a Pokemon ID. I'll use that instead. Way easier. Okay, event.currentTarget.id. Okay, so if I take this out, I'm going to double check ID. So I'll refresh this. If I click on Bulbasaur, 1 Ivysaur, 2 Venusaur. Okay, looking good. So, whoops, I meant to uncomment that. Comment this out. So now I'll be able to be in here. I'll just console.log just to make sure I can get inside this function. And I'll say like attempting to delete Pokemon with ID. So we refresh this. Yep. Thanks. Perfect call. Let's refresh this. Okay. Let's try to delete Pikachu. I got a response. Body, false, true, 200 okay. What do you guys think happened? I still see Pikachu.
It didn't refresh the search, like your page.
Hey, Pikachu's gone. So, and if we look in our little mock database, Pikachu is gone here too. So it looks like the event, the delete went through. We weren't given any notification. I'll do it again for Arbok. Let me refresh this. Did I click on Arbok? I did not. Let me click on Arbok. Okay. It said attempting to delete it. It gave back this response. It didn't really tell us if anything happened. I'm going to make a slightly better message because at this point, if we got a response, it looks like for the most part that means that it went through. So I'll say successfully deleted Pokemon, and then I'll say the ID. So I can get rid of this because I know if it got into here, then it was actually successfully deleted, and it wasn't just like attempting to delete. So if I refresh this, Arbok will be gone. If I click on Ekans, successfully deleted Pokemon 23. But Ekans is still there. So how do I get rid of Ekans at this point? I could refresh the page.
Or refetch.
Refetch. Let's do that. So we will, let's see. We could refetch. Let's see. What was that?
Yeah.
So we could refetch. And then as part of that refetch, it will, let's see what happens. So we'll just have it here. Fetch all Pokemon. Ivysaur, whatnot. So if I attempt to delete Fearow, what happened?
Because you gotta delete all the elements on the page first.
All right, let's do that then. I want to keep my fetch methods purely fetch, so I'm going to create just like a really small helper function. We'll do clear Pokemon. I cannot spell. And we'll do, let's see, clear Pokemon. It will be get Pokemon container dot inner HTML, and we can just do nothing. So let's see, we could put it inside here. I don't think it's needed until we actually, let's see, we could fetch here. Let's try that. So Fearow was deleted. Let's try Spearow now. Hey, that's pretty cool. Spiro is now gone. Is there any way we could be maybe a little bit more efficient? What if this Pokemon API returned like 2,000 Pokemon? I mean, we're getting pretty close. There's like 700 Pokemon now.
You could just remove the element.
Right. Okay, so let's try that. Instead of clearing it, we'll keep this here. Let's just try to remove this. Anyone have any good ideas how?
Can you just get object by ID? Like essentially the same way you're selecting it on the page when you have the this.
Yep, so the node.append child has an inverse. It's the node.remove child. So what I can do document.remove. I'm not sure if that's more efficient or if I do like get container.remove. I'll just do document.remove. Instead of append child, we want to remove child, and then we need to somehow select this HTML element with this ID. Does that make sense to everyone? Okay, so let's do just document.query selector. Let's get this by its ID, whatever it may be. This is not Ruby. There's also I need backticks. Okay. Okay. Query selector. We're getting the ID. Actually, let me just do get element by ID. I actually think this is a little cleaner. Okay. Get this element. Remove that child from the document. All right. Let's give this a try. We're running low on Pokemon, but there's still plenty to experiment on. So we'll eradicate. Remove child on node. Node to be removed is not a child of this node. Okay. So what had happened was I did document. This node is not a direct child of this document, so it complained. So it looks like we're actually going to need to select this Pokemon container because it is the direct parent. It should be an easy fix. It should just be get Pokemon container, remove child. Let's refresh the page. Let's attempt to remove Rattata. Nice. So single page application. Didn't have to make another API call to refresh the page. Didn't have to make another API call to re-get the data. We just made a delete. That all happened behind the scenes, unbeknownst to the user, and then we just removed that element from the page. So if I refresh this, I can go on like a Pokemon killing spree. It's like kill all of them. All right, I'll stop there.
What happens if you click one in the middle?
In the middle?
Adjust.
So I think it might actually depend on like where does this element start and stop. So like, for example, it looks like because of like margin settings or the CSS, even if you click in between, it's still technically part of that HTML element, maybe? Or
Sorry, I meant more like what would happen to the other.
Does it collapse when you delete
Oh!
them? Yeah, that's not.
Yep.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, now you know. So it looks like the remove child, like kind of like the CSS is like readjust for that. That's awesome. We can do one more. We'll take out Venusaur. All right. Well, okay, I'll stop now. I need the rest to demo. Awesome. So what did we learn? So this is the typical skeleton for get. Get some data from this API, JSON parse it, and then do something with that data. Delete is similar. So this is typical delete fetch. You're going to have hey, fetch this URL. You're going to modify, or you're going to send in some options to specify I want to delete this, and then you don't need to do anything with the response. I'm pretty sure, so let's just comment this out. Actually, in this case, you do need it because you want to do something after you know the response is successfully completed. But if you don't care about alerting the user, like if you don't need anything dynamic to happen on the page, if you have like, hey, if you click on this, it'll be deleted, but like unbeknownst to the user, the request will still go through. You just have no way of knowing if it like successfully completed because you never unwrapped this promise, and B, no way of alerting the user or doing something after a successful delete. Does that make sense? Okay. With the get, since we're actually dealing with JSON data in the response body, we kind of have to unwrap a promise. We trigger another promise because we need to parse it and then unwrap that one. With the delete, you don't need to do the second unwrapping. You only need to unwrap the response once just to make sure the response like exists, and then do something. So that's a typical delete fetch. Okay, so delete a Pokemon on click. Great. This next one's fun. Create your own Pokemon. All right, who has a guess what verb this will be? Post. Post. All right. So our post request will be /Pokemon. When you work with a third-party API, I'm hoping that it's a good API that's well documented. They will tell you how to use these different verbs and these different endpoints. They'll tell you what URL to use to get data, what URL to use to get like a single piece of data, and then like which ones to use to like post, put, patch, and delete. JSON server, its defaults are just whatever your key is, and then for post, it doesn't require an ID. Because it'll just say, hey, I'm posting a new Pokemon. Here's the data. It'll generate an ID for you. That's kind of how APIs should be. As a developer, I shouldn't worry about like what IDs already exist. The API backend server should take care of all that for me so that there's no conflicts in IDs or anything like that. So I've kind of created my own little documentation of what data needs to be included in a post call. So in our example, all we need is to provide a name for our Pokemon and the sprite URL. And if you actually look at our pseudo mock database, that's all that's needed. Just the name, the sprite, the ID is auto-generated. So let's create a new Pokemon using, okay, I typed in weird stuff. All right, so let's create a function to post new Pokemon. And I'll do it a little bit differently. Right now, I won't make any fetch calls. I'll just create some mock like, attempting to create new Pokemon. Okay. So when do I want to create a new Pokemon?
Submit button is quick.
On a submit button. Okay. So let's do that. On the load of the DOM, let's go ahead and just add a event listener to our form. So I'll do document.query selector. I'll select our form and then add an event listener. The event I'm interested in is the submit event. And what do I want to do? Let's create a helper function that is, we'll do form, what I name the other one? Add click handler. I'll do add form handler. Handler. Okay. So here's my form handler. Actually, what's cleaner? Maybe I'll put this in here and just put this here. Yeah, I'll do that instead. Okay, and then in here, I'll just hard code my callback function. Okay, so on click of the submit button, what should we do?
So you switch the add form handler?
Yeah, I thought it'd be slightly cleaner if my DOM content loaded kind of just described
No, in the document query
Oh.
form.
Yeah, form dot. So this is add event handler.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Listener.
event listener. Okay, thank you. So what do we want to do on click of this submit? We know we somehow need to make a fetch call with like this data right here. How do we do that?
I thought the fetch call is, so on submit it needs to post, it's sending a post request to the Pokemon index. Right, which
Okay. So if we call post new Pokemon, we can link it up like that.
Are you thinking like we need to grab the data from the form and then?
So if we click on submit right now, it attempts to create a new Pokemon, and then what else do we notice happens?
Oh, we need
Refresh.
lock default action.
Yeah. So we have our event. We'll do event.prevent default. So give this a try, submit. Okay, cool. Attempting to create now Pokemon, new Pokemon. And Susanna said that we somehow need to grab this information. So let's do that. I'm just going to create them in variables. So let's just do let Pokemon name equals, I'll just do document.query selector. Did I give an ID to this? I think I did. Name input. I'll mix it up actually. Get element by ID dot value. And then we'll do let Pokemon sprite equals document dot get element by ID dot value. This ID is sprite input. Okay, and let's pass in this data to our post new Pokemon function. I'll get Pokemon name, Pokemon sprite. So now it should console log if we provided the parameters. Attempting to create new Pokemon with image, whoops. Pokemon sprite. So if I save that, and I say create a new Pokemon, I'm gonna call him Woohoo, google.com. Attempting to create new Pokemon Woohoo with image google.com. Nice, okay. So we are able to get this data. How do we proceed? Does anyone have questions up to this point? Okay, so we need to somehow make a fetch call. And I know fetch takes in a URL. Sometimes it takes in additional options. Not sure where to start. Go back and look at documentation. Okay, so lucky us. It looks like this is an actual example of a post call. So we can do fetch URL, and we know our URL is going to be, based on the documentation, it's just /Pokemon. So I'm just going to go back and copy this. And then I'm going to provide it options with method : post. Okay. Now what should I do?
Is the data you want to have, do you have sitting in the body or in the headers?
So let's take a look at what documentation says. So to post a new Pokemon, I would need, so it shows me an example here where I have some data that's passed into this method. That data is some JavaScript object, and I do, the body should be set to json.stringify data. So this is important. With a post, your body must be a string. So that's why you see it here, JSON.stringify. This data is a JavaScript object, so if you were just to pass it, it would look like a JSON-like thing. You need to make sure it's a string, otherwise your request won't go through. So let's just copy part of this like documentation we have, and let's paste it in. So method is one argument. They have a bunch of other stuff that for the most part we're going to ignore. The next one is body. And let me clean this up a bit. So we're going to need the body to be JSON.stringify. Name, some sprite, some sprite. Let's change that. Okay, and what do we want these values to be instead?
We want them to be Pokemon name, right?
Okay. All right. Cool. Now what? So this in itself is like a JavaScript object. So if we have this, since it's a JavaScript object, it'll know that it'll just take on this value, and then once we do the JSON stringify, that will turn all of this into a string. All right, now what do we want to do? Do you want to test it out?
Sure.
All right, so let's refresh this. I'm going to create a Pokemon. Someone give me a better name because I'm not very creative. We'll call him Snoopy. Snoopy's a new Pokemon. Well, just any URL for now. Submit. Okay, well, I have no idea what happens. I can look at my database. Oh. So it has an ID of 8. Looks like it wasn't created with a name or sprite. So that's odd. Let's see if we can debug that. I'm going to pull this out into data. So let data equal all this. I'm going to attempt to JSON stringify data. And then down here, I'm going to console log my data. Okay, so let's refresh. Let's try to, whoops. Async undefined. Did I do something wrong? What's up? Snoopy? Oh, or undefined. All right, I'm gonna get rid of Snoopy. Yeah, that makes sense. Bye, Snoopy. Let's try that again. And now I have a syntax error. Okay. Was that it? I think that was it. There we go. All right. Let's create Snoopy again. Some URL, just Google. Okay, so I see name, sprite, google.com. That's odd. What else are we missing? Let's take a look. Does anyone have any ideas what it might be? Maybe there's something here we actually do need that we haven't done yet. Okay, so we have our method post. We know we need the body. What else do we typically need when we need to make a post call? Okay, well, let's just look at JSON server documentation. Okay. Server, JSON server. When doing a request, it's good to know that if you make a post, put, patch, or delete, changes will be automatically saved to your db.json. Okay, cool, we know that. Your request body JSON should be object enclosed, just like a get output, for example. Okay, that's what our data looks like right here. What else? ID values are not mutable. Any ID value in the body will be ignored. Okay, that's fine, we don't have it. A post, put, or patch request should include a content type application JSON header. Okay, that's interesting. So in this post example, we have a headers option that has content type application JSON, JSON. It's got all this other stuff. We might not need this. Let's go ahead and put this in. Let's clean this up a bit. We can actually just. Oops. Okay.
It's like an Easter egg, I guess.
All right. Let's try it again. So I'm going to refresh. Snoopy is still breaking our application. Go Snoopy. Google.com. Okay, still nothing. Let's check. Hey, Snoopy's there now. So that's something to definitely keep in mind. With the post, patch, or put, almost all APIs will require some sort of headers. So post almost always requires headers. Same thing with the patch or put. Some other APIs out there might require additional headers even for like gets and deletes. Just read the documentation of whatever API you're currently using very carefully to make sure you figure out your setup. So, yes.
Is that header default put in the session data as well?
You mean like over the HTTP? Like, I believe it does. We can take a look. So we know that we were able to successfully create Snoopy. If I refresh, you should actually see like, yeah, Google.com is not a thing. If I create like, Snoopy2 and then Google.com, we can take a look at the network tab, which is usually where like these network calls are recorded. So if I submit this, some things are provided to us by like default. So here's a post call. Our request header, some things are like defaulted sent, so like our user agent. This is a Mac. It looks like for default we don't send it any session ID. You as a developer might have to do that. And then turns out JSON server has some default response headers. So if we were to unwrap our promise and do something with it, we might get this type of data that we could work with. Okay. All right. So back to the console. So we created Snoopy's 2 just now, and he's not on the page. How do we make this truly a single page application? Okay, create his card. When do we want to create his card?
Probably on the return that the post has been successful.
Awesome. Okay, so let's chain on a then. Here's our response. Let's just take it one step at a time. Let's just console log this response and see what we get. So refresh this. I'm going to create Woodstock bird.com. Okay. Okay, this is cool. So anyone notice anything interesting about this object we got? It actually looks just like a response we would get if we were making a get call. So even though this is a response object, we could end it at this and say, okay, I got a response object, like let's do something. But since we know this response has a body and a readable stream, let's use that to our advantage. Let's JSON that response dot not body response.json, then it, and then this is JSON data. And here we would do something. Our something for now will just be console logging it. Okay. So we have Snoopy, Snoopy2, Woodstock. I'm going to do Charlie Brown. And turns out that this JSON server mock API, for a post, it actually sends us back that data. It sends us back the resource it created. In our case, that actually could be really useful because remember before we didn't send it an ID, but the API has gone ahead and created this resource for us with an ID. So that's really cool. This JSON data is essentially this Pokemon, is a Pokemon object. So I'm going to call it that. And so now I should just be able to render this Pokemon on the page. And like all this stuff should be created. So like the Pokemon ID, it'll pull this ID, the Pokemon name, it'll pull this name. So with the delete, we're basically just waiting for a response and saying, cool, successfully deleted. With the post, it's really useful to wait for the response to get back to us and then do something with that data because we now have data about this resource that didn't exist before. So let's render said Pokemon. Refresh the page. I'm going to delete all this stuff. Okay, and we're back with our 5 Pokemon. I'm just going to try some stuff. Hey, look at that. We know that when we hit the submit, if we go to, oh, cool. If we go to our Pokemon.json, that resource has been created, and we see the immediate change on the DOM. So single page application look and feel. That's really awesome. Let's actually create Pokemon with like actual sprites so that we can have some fun with this. So we can create a Pokemon. Oh yeah, as a note, data for a post, put, or patch has to be delivered in a string. That's why you always see this JSON.stringify. And then in my notes here, so this is a typical post fetch. So post fetch tends to be kind of the more complicated of the fetch. We're saying, hey, fetch me this API with this method, with this data, with this header, and then once you get me the response, I want to JSON parse it to get this new resource, and then once you JSON parse it, you do something with it. So Pokemon actually has this really cool like folder on GitHub where if you give it any Pokemon ID, you can get the raw sprite. So let's see what kooky Pokemon we can come up with. I'm gonna force someone to shout out a name of a Pokemon that doesn't exist. And so this and Pokemon, and now there are 720 Pokemon. Someone give me a number from 1 to 720. 600. All right, let's see what happens. Oh, so this is Pokemon number 600. All right, I'm gonna pick on more people. I'm gonna pick on Melanie. Someone give me a random number from 0 to 720. 426. Let's see what this Pokemon looks like. Melanie's a balloon. This is a ghost balloon. Okay, I'm gonna pick on Morgan. All right. What was that? 420. Oh, Morgan's like little berry Pokemon. All right, but that's pretty fun. So we created almost a full CRUD application using fetch, using like a mock API. The very last thing we didn't really get to touch on is patch and put. They work very, 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 very similarly to posts. Really, the only difference is instead of post, you would put patch or put. But you would still supply it the header. You would still supply it data. You might not need this entire data. It might only be like one key value pair, but it works the same. All right. Does anyone want to play around with this a little bit more? Give me like a couple more names, and then I'll be done. Cat. Okay, this cat Pokemon, and a random number. 300. So So cat. Oh my god, it's an actual cat. This is Skitty. It's a cat Pokemon. Alright. I'll stop nerding out. That's hilarious. That you knew that. But yeah, that's all I got for you guys today. Thank you.